Director Cardenas, Director Daly,
Here.
Director Keegley,
Here.
Director Olson, Director Peterson,
Here.
Director Prokopis,
Here.
Director Silvestrini,
Here.
Director Stevenson.
Here. All right, thank you. We'll move into public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Not seeing any. Item 3, hiring incentives, resolution 240901. We'll hear from Chief Olson.
Good morning. So we appreciate you meeting on short notice in a special meeting. We just have one item today, and that's the hiring incentive for lateral officers. As you know, we've been struggling with our numbers and our staffing lately. And so to attract new candidates to the process, specifically lateral candidates that are already trained and would have the ability to get out there and work a little quicker than entry-level person, we're proposing a one-time hiring incentive of $4,000 for candidates that apply within the window of September 1st to September 30th of this year. It's kind of a pilot program. We'll see how that goes, and then we can adjust as needed from there. We do have Debbie Sanchez has evaluated the budget and has come up with a mechanism to fund this incentive with no additional revenues needed. Basically, that would come from the benefit load of those vacant allocations that we currently have. And so we're asking for $80,000 for this this pilot program. So in essence, we can incentivize up to 20 candidates to join UPD, 20 lateral candidates to join UPD within that 1 month window. And that's basically it. Are there any specific questions about this incentive?
Yeah, I just have just something I want to talk about a little bit. One, I'm absolutely for it if it's going to bring bodies on board. I think, you know, my understanding is it takes about 10 months to bring somebody in from the bottom up, which I think long term is still something we have to really push. But we've got a short-term issue that we've got to address, and this is a way to do it. My only concern, I guess, would be, and I don't know if there's been any thought given to this, is as it relates to the Sheriff's Bureau. If we get applicants from the Sheriff Bureau that left UPD and now are coming back on an incentive, would that create any issues internally with us, with morale of people having left and coming back? I guess that would be my only concern. I'm not sure it would matter either way. I think if we think we're going to get laterals through this policy, I'm 100% for it, because I think we've got an issue we got to address. But that's just a question I would have.
Yeah, and so we've talked a lot about the optics of that specific issue. Someone leaving and then being incentivized basically to leave and come back. So for me, the question that I come back to is, why are we doing this incentive? And that is to bring qualified, trained people into our group that can join and be productive almost immediately. When you think about these folks that left and went to the county, if they were to come back, yes, they would receive the incentive under this program. However, they are literally plug and play individuals. From a training perspective, we could have them out working within a week. And that, you know, from a morale standpoint, I get the one side of the optic that, you know, they're being incentivized to leave and come back. But on the other side of that, that is a person working within a week to alleviate some of the shortages and the mandatory overtime that we've gone to in the recent past. So there are two sides to the coin. I understand both of those, But I think the objective of this proposal is to get people out working as quickly as possible. And to incentivize those folks coming from the county to come back does that. So that's my take on it.
This is Carolyn. I have two questions. One is, how are we going to outreach this? Will it be effective? I mean, I'm all for it. I'm just curious what our marketing strategy is going to be. And then the second question I have is, didn't the sheriff office also offer incentives to pull those people away?
Yes, so, and that's, so let me answer the first part of that question as far as how we'll market this. My vision of that is, obviously we would put it on our website, up with our lateral recruitment flyer that's already out there. We've attended some job fairs recently. We didn't market this in those, but going forward, that would be something we could do. And then again, our best recruiting tool is our people. And so it really would be incumbent upon all of us that work here to message that out to our friends and coworkers and acquaintances that we have in the other departments. So that's kind of how that would work. The second part of that question, so I'm sorry, Carolyn, could you repeat your second part of that? I got sidetracked on the first part.
Sure. So the question was, didn't the sheriff's office also do an incentive?
Yes, they did. And so there was an agreement that a member would need to sign going to the sheriff's office, need to stay for a year in order for them to keep their accrued vacation or I'm not a vacation, but accrued sick leave that they brought over. That was part of the agreement with the sheriff's office, was that they would need to remain there for a year. So that's going to be a challenge for them. If they were to leave, they would probably walk away from that sick leave. For other departments, there are departments that have already done retention bonuses or sign-on bonuses that have a repayment agreement. And so for those individuals, our incentive would help them to repay some of those obligations that they might have if they chose to do that, right? So we're just going to basically give them this incentive, and if they choose to use that money to repay another obligation, that would be up to them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Is in the chat.
I think you may have covered mine, Chief, but my concern is just, is this going to start some kind of a wage war thing, or is it already happening? It sounds like it's already happening.
It is already happening, and so as I've actually started a salary study for this year, and as I've done that, I've been looking at what other departments are doing to incentivize new recruits and to retain their current staff. And there's a myriad of different programs out there. Probably the most common and the most popular are the retention bonuses and the recruiting bonuses. It's a very simplistic way to incentivize people to come to your department or to stay with your department. And so, as we've had these discussions, we've really tried to determine where can we get the greatest bang for our buck, right? Obviously, there's a monetary need attached to this, a budgetary impact, and so we want to get the big we can for those dollars that we're putting out there. And for our current situation, as I've stated, getting trained people out working as quickly as possible is the highest priority in my mind. And I think others that, Chief Mazur, and we've talked about this quite extensively. I think everyone's pretty much in agreement that that's where we would see the biggest impact.
Mark, you have another online question.
Another online question?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Mayor Dolly, and to answer Mayor Dolly's question, yes, there would be an agreement that would be signed, obligating them to pay that back were they to sign on and leave.
Yes.
that's a 2-year term. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the question was, will there be a repayment agreement for this $4,000? The answer to that is yes. We're envisioning a 2-year obligation. If the candidate were to leave within that time frame, they would be obligated to repay that $4,000 in total. It will not be prorated.
I have a question. Would they come across with time only, or we're not recognizing seniority or anything? They would come in at the bottom. They may be paid for their experience, but that's it.
So what we would recognize as pay and leave balance accruals, they would not get their seniority if they were to come over. Obviously, that would have a very negative impact on morale if we were to do something like that for our current employees.
Is this one-time payment up front? After so many days, then they get it, and is it pensionable?
Yes, so it will not be pensionable because it's not base salary. It would be basically an incentive pay, and it would be paid on their first payroll after their hire.
One more question. What about the last person that we hired? I don't know when that was, the last lateral, maybe say they were just hired in May or June and they didn't qualify for this, and then you create some issues with existing employees.
That's true. That's the case with any incentive that you do. You're going to disadvantage some folks and advantage others, and that's just the reality of it. We saw that with recognizing jail time from folks coming from the jail. We've talked about that issue in the past. We recognize that time now, but we don't retroactively, and that has created some morale issues. We actually saw some folks leave and go to Salt Lake County just because of that issue. We've evaluated that. There's a significant financial impact to the organization to correct that if we were to go retroactive, and it would be the same in this case. If we were to look at it, we actually did just hire a lateral in July. She's currently in training, and so that individual would be disadvantaged by this. But you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and so we're looking at September 1st as that line in the sand, and anyone that applies after that would be eligible.
Hey, just one more quick question. I'm just curious where the $4,000 came from. Do we feel like that's enough to achieve the goal that you're after? Or is that just a budgeting thing where that's the conversion of how much money we had to spend? Obviously my question is if that's not enough, if 5,000's the number or 6,000, now would be the time to change that. So I'm just curious about where that number came from, and if we think it's going to be enough to incentivize the ultimate goal here.
So that's a great question. And again, there's budgetary constraints that we were trying to work within. We identified $80,000 through that, the benefit load of those unfilled vacancies that we currently have. That's where the money's coming from. And so Debbie did those evaluations and came up with 80,000 usable funds for right now. The $4,000 was rather arbitrary, but there are other entities, other agencies that have put out retention bonuses in the recent past. And so the intent was to make it significant enough that if those individuals wanted to use those funds to repay those retention bonuses at their former agency, that it would cover those costs, or at least the vast majority of those costs. That's kind of how we got there.
Mayor, if I could also help answer that question. One of the things that we've been talking about in command staff meetings are the staffing shortages and the questions of being able to cover all the shifts. And we may need to go to a second mandatory shift per month or change it just to make sure that we're having minimum number of people in the seats. So as we looked at a way to incentivize this, there was a proposal that actually was debated where there was less incentive money being offered. And ultimately, after consideration of all the issues, the commanders voted to fall into this number for the very reason that it probably seems like the number that will be most effective within whatever budgetary constraints we have, and also provide an end game for those who are being asked to sign up for mandatory shifts to know that we're doing everything we can within our budget to alleviate the need for further mandatory overtime. So it was actually discussed internally with all of our command staff here, including the precinct chiefs, as a way to arrive at a number that will be effective and help alleviate some of the mandatory overtime shifts we're working on. So on the morale aspect, yes, so there could be some morale issues, but I think that in the end, this is the most morale positive solution we could come up with.
And if I can speak to that as well, you know, we thought about going higher, but then we weren't sure we wanted to get into the situation where we were paying back all of these lateral officers for their agreements that they made to their employer and start paying those off. What we wanted was to provide an incentive that would help them if they needed in paying a portion of that off, and get those that really wanted to come over to UPD, rather than just encourage lateral officers to move from one area to another, you know, as long as their obligation was going to be paid off. So, and we wanted to get, as Mark mentioned, the most bang for our buck. We thought about going to 100,000. We didn't know, you know, we thought realistically we could get, if we offered 4,000, we would look at 20 officers. So we don't know if we're able to get that, but we thought that that would be a starting point.
I imagine you guys arrived at this because you think there's a level of interest. Maybe there's some buyer's remorse or something going on with those that maybe went to the sheriff's office.
Actually, the information is not coming from the sheriff's office as to who would be interested, but I don't want to name the department, but we've had some lateral candidates from another department who indicated that there are other people in that department that are interested in coming. They just are looking at the financial obligations that they would incur if they do. So what got this whole process going was a candidate who is already interested has indicated that others may be interested as well if we could come up with some sort of an incentive for those others to come over. And so the actual impetus for this were discussions, both anecdotally and directly, that others who are tied to perhaps repayment agreements would love to come here if it wasn't a financial burden on them if they do.
And it wasn't the county. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't the county.
Thank you.
I guess in short, my question is, if we're going to do this, we're hoping to get a very short-term reaction to this incentive. And is there a difference between going from 4,000 to 5,000? If there's not, then I certainly wouldn't want to spend the money. But if there is, now would be the time to make that decision, not 2 or 3 weeks down the road when we figured out we didn't pull as many people as we wanted to. So I guess that would be my question, maybe for some of the, you know, board members and staff. If it doesn't make any difference between 4 or 5, you're going to get what you're going to get, then certainly I'd stay at 4. But if that's a significant incentive and that's going to pull more people over and that's the ultimate goal, I'd rather make that decision now than wait.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Mark. I was just going to say, Mayor, we're not sure if 4, to your point, if 4 is enough or 5. You know, 5 would probably incentivize maybe more, but we're just really not sure where that spot is. So that's kind of a difficult call. I think we would have the funds if we wanted to go to 5. Just because we have so many vacancies right now, but that's a tough call.
I would support going to 5 if we have the funds for it, just on the hope that it would be more effective than 4. And we do have a need to fill, so.
I agree with Jeff.
Am I kidding? There was, as part of that discussion, so the department that kind of started this all, we do know that, for a lot of them to pay back what they owe, most of them would fall within this $6,500 range that they would have to pay back to that department. So we thought about, shall we go there? And I don't know, maybe that would bring more of them over if they thought they didn't have any, any liability if they came over. So, I'm just throwing that out there. But that is a department that said that they had a lot of people, they had others that were interested in coming over if they didn't have that liability that they needed to worry about. And we had one of them provide us some numbers. And that's why we believe that 6,500 would, if they could pay that off. I don't know how many that would draw over, but 6,500 seems like the number that a lot of them may need to pay back.
And I think part of this was kind of a beta test, if you will, trial period to see how this goes for a month. And then we can sit down and reevaluate after that and determine its effectiveness. And we can look at those issues about, maybe increasing the amount or extending the program or, all of that's obviously budgetary driven, but and what's available. But I think we just need a little bit of time to really understand it and how it's working.
I'd be in favor of going to, if, I'm assuming, Debbie, that where this money's coming from is just the money that's created for not being able to go to full staffing, and it doesn't make, there's not a real budget impact between 80 and 100,000. I'm gonna agree with Mayor Silvestrini, and I think it was Carolyn. I'd just soon go to 5 right now and then go through that same process that you're talking about in terms of evaluating, but I'd rather step it to 5 right now.
Yes, I would too.
And that's fine too. I just wanted, you guys were talking about trying to get, what would incentivize more to come over? And I just know that number was out there. So, and that's fine. I think going to 5 is fine. Going to 100,000 is also fine. The money is in the budget for that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is upping from 4,000 to 5,000 per recruit per lateral, and then from a total of 80,000 to 100,000.
So, Mayor, may I suggest
Mr. Chair, I will
procedurally
make-
that? Sorry, I was going to just say that somebody should make a motion to amend the proposal.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution with the amendment to raise the incentive from $4,000 to $5,000.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Since we're all online and just had a healthy discussion, Harmony, will you call roll on this one?
Yes, Director Brems,
Aye.
Director Cardenas, Director Daly,
Aye.
Director Keegley,
Aye.
Director Olson, Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any other business? Hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for the support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We have one.